ערב טוב לאחיה אנזי. Good evening, Achia Anzi. I started in Hebrew because we're like a brother.
Because we are used to it. Yeah.
Achia, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you, Ram?
I'm good. So my name is Rami Ozeri and I'm the founder of the Jerusalem Biennale. We're here today in the third talk as part of the 2020 online series. And we're going to speak with Achia Anzi, who is born in Israel in 1979, but has been living in India for the last 17 years. So everywhere we wrote 14, but it became 17 already. Achia is an artist, but he's also a professor. And he presented one installation as part of the Jerusalem Biennale 2017. That's how we met. And then sorry for that. And then he has a few quite extraordinary exhibitions. One of the things that I saw was Nimrod in 2011, created by Gidon Ofrat. For those of you who doesn't know, Gidon Ofrat is one of really the most important curators of contemporary art in Israel. So we're here to ask Achia how he's doing and are things in New Delhi those days.
Well, New Delhi is similar to what is happening elsewhere, also in Israel. Well, we are home. We are okay. We are lucky. We keep on teaching in the university. And yeah, this is it.
So you're locked at home, and it's just like everywhere else. Like you hear the news, and India is just the same point. Like where do you stand?
I guess the lockdown in Delhi. Yeah, the lockdown in Delhi, I guess, is even stricter than other places. Like, let's say, Israel. We can go out in my area, we can go out to buy stuff from the shop, but otherwise nothing. And that's going to be the situation until May, 3rd May, but after that, we are not really sure what's going to happen.
And the kids do not go to school, you do not go to work?
No.
Like a complete shutdown?
Yeah, we do homeschooling, and there's some stuff that the school is sending. We try to entertain them to the best of our abilities.
Okay, you have 2 boys, right?
Yeah, 2 boys. One is 6 years old and the other is 3.
That's nice. That's very close to our, I think we have a special guest.
Yeah, my mother.
Hello, Shalom, how are you?
Shalom, I am fine. בהצלחה.
תודה רבה, תודה רבה. כיף לראות אותך פה.
תודה.
אז בעצם אתם, so basically you're at home and I guess you're not working so much on new artworks?
No, so first of all, I can't go to my studio, even though the studio is not so far from here. As I said before, the lockdown is quite strict. But I'm also very busy, as I told you in our previous conversation. I'm trying to complete my PhD thesis. So in a sense, the lockdown is also good for me, staying home in front of the laptop and just trying to complete my research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is more or less what I do. In the last few days, I started thinking about my next projects, what to do after coming out of the lockdown, some other proposals that I'm hoping to pursue after this, but practically no, I'm fully into my research.
Can you tell us a little bit about your research? I know it's comparing contemporary art in Israel and in India.
India. Yeah, the point of departure for my research was indeed a comparison between Indian and Israeli art, contemporary art. That's the way it started. You mentioned Gidon Ofrat, who is also a very important art historian. So I met him 2 years back, and um, one of the things that we discussed was the similarity between the development of modern Indian art and modern Israeli art, and it was quite enlightening, the whole conversation. But the point is not to go also only and see history, but also to see how both Indian and Israeli artists are dealing with contemporary issues such as migration, nationality, identity, colonialism, etc. So that's the overall framework of my research.
Great, so maybe we'll get back to this later, but it's obvious that your whole work is around people on the move. That's like something that I remember that we called the title of what we was interested in Biennale 2017. It was the whole thing about people on the move. Yeah. And before the, like just a few minutes, I read your short bio, like just anecdotes from your bio, and I started from the fact that you were born in Israel and moved to India. But then I think maybe your bio really starts here. I'm going to read another part. A few months after immigrating from Manahe, Yemen, to the absorption center in Rosh Ha'ain, Anzi's grandparents shifted to a shed in a transit camp, Ma'abara, in Afula. Gradually, the Ma'abara was transformed into a shikun, public housing, and the shed was replaced by a rectangular house with a tiled roof. His grandfather built an additional section that served as a drawing room. Above the sitting area, he left an opening in the ceiling, according to the Yemeni Jewish tradition, which served as a sukkah, and on other days were covered by white plywood and a small tin roof, which protected the house from the rain. So your biography really starts there, I think.
Well, yeah, I guess none of us, we carry the happily, I guess, carry the burden of tradition. And I guess the migration, what we would call in Hebrew Aliyah, of my grandparents from Yemen to Israel, from my father's side. My father as well was born in Yemen. And my grandparents from my mother's side came from Romania. So that experience influenced me, like I guess many other Israelis of my generation, in difference from our parents' generation. We were not just trying to find our roots and to see Israel as a place which identifies us, a place which defines our nationality, our behavior, etc., etc. We were also interested in this world which was fading away. No, part of the installations that I did in 2017 and then the exhibitions that I did in 2019 in Afula. It was conceived after the passing away of my grandparents, of my grandmother. My grandfather passed away many years back. And I was exploring their house and trying to see through the architecture a different way of living and to commemorate it, to remember this, to evoke it, etc., etc. But yeah, I think this is one exercise among many that many people of my generations are not. We are not simply interested in what happened to us in Israel, but also we are interested in many of the traditions which were pushed away. Means I think it's quite known. So yeah, I guess if you wish, my journey didn't start with me moving to India, but also started with my grandparents shifting from Yemen to Israel.
And there's on the screen, you can see a few images from this installation back in 2017 in the Biennale. We gave you a very rough space, you know. I love the space. I thought that's an amazing space, and I think you did too. But it's not something that any artist could handle, and you turned it into some journey into your grandparents' house in Afula. So it's you can see here all kinds of elements that were taken from the old house and was replaced in the so-called gallery space.
Rami, I'm not sure everyone can see the images. I can't see the images. I can see your Facebook page.
Amy, can you see the image on Facebook?
No.
Okay.
No, see the Facebook.
Okay, so let me see. What do I do? No. Let's try again. I share the screen, and I put this, and I share.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the space that I spoke about, and remind you anything, Achia?
Yeah, absolutely. I must say that I'm also in this installation. I'm grateful to the curator of this project, Avshalom Suleiman, who is also an artist, who not only single-handedly installed the installation, but he also helped me to conceive the space, to think about the experience of the space, which was indeed not very easy, but with a very interesting character. And the way that Avshalom decided to organize the space is a kind of journey that you go into till you reach that sculpture on the floor with the LED, blue LED light. So it started with a video of the opening inside the house of my grandparents. It is an opening which is in the video I played with the roof, open and close the video. And then you go on and you discover more stuff inside.
So this element of the open part on the roof was mentioned before in the text, that also was part of this exhibition. And I think what it symbolizes is this tension that you're always occupied with, the tension between the home, like the study place, and the traveling or the journey or the moving around. And so it starts from the immigration or aliyah of your grandparents, but then it turns into yourself. So part of your bio, like many Israelis, after the army you go to India, but not like most of us. I spent like 7 months in India and came back to study in the Hebrew University. You decided to stay.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
what was the?
I need to.
Can you tell us the story? Just tell us the story. What happened? It's very interesting.
Well, yeah, I was traveling for 2 years. I was a backpacker in India, and at a certain point, quite at an early stage, I decided that I want to stay. I think I had passion. Means it's not as if I could verbalize it to myself at this point, but I had, I guess, a passion to discover a different way of living, different world, alternative to to the way I was raised in Israel, or if to put it more in a more accurate manner, a way of putting together many things that I uh, grew up with, many of the ideals and many of the beliefs, etc., and to somehow um, um, see a different how different culture respond to that, and um, how this is how different people in different space conceive those things. But if I will put it, I think, I guess what I said now is very quite abstract. But to put it very simply, I think that in India there is an alternative to modernity in the way we conceive it in Israel and other places, so-called West. So even though it's not as if I decided, oh, I want an alternative to my life in Israel and I want to think about modernity in a different way. I think this is what happened in the process. There is something about the way in which India still today, and there are many Indias, right? But still dealing with let's say um, the conflict between modernity and tradition, the conflict between rationality and religion, the conflict between so on and so forth. So yeah, I think if in Israel I grew up on very clear dichotomies. So you can either be religious or secular, or you can either be educated, or you can follow superstitions. Of course, I'm exaggerating, yeah. But in India, definitely, India is a place which um, um, kind of he posits those questions, if at all, in a different way. And I think that possibility that fascinated me. So
not to be in either extreme of the or in either side. It's not to choose a side. It's just to be a complicated person that sometimes is here and sometimes is there, and doesn't have to really define itself in a very close way.
Yeah, I will give you an example. It's not as if as I said, it's not as if I was conceptualizing what I sense and what is my attraction to the place. But I will just throw an example. I grew up in an Orthodox house, as you know, and growing up as a religious boy, a religious Jew in Israel, there were certain conflicts between the halacha and modernity, and how you should handle with certain technologies, etc., etc. So I remember going one day in one religious gathering in India, and I've seen a sadhu, a Baba, a Hindu monk, sitting in his traditional cloth and reciting some verses in Sanskrit, I guess. You know, ancient text recited for so long, and he did it on a mic, and it was not an issue, and
it wasn't Shabbat, I guess. Was it Shabbat?
No, it wasn't Shabbat, but you know,
Just kidding.
of course it was not Shabbat. No, but the point is that it didn't matter to him. It was not even an issue. He was so absorbed. He was so absorbed in his tradition, his faith, and his belief, and all that the fact that he had to recite on the mic didn't change anything. Now, it's not to say that in Judaism there is technophobia, but obviously the changes that the West went through were conceived with suspicion, and means this is a different history. It's not to criticize any side, but just to say that there is a different way in which a tradition negotiated the changes of the last 200-300 years in India, despite colonialism, despite so.
And a tradition, obviously, at least for me, is so strongly and directly related to home, like the definition of home, like where do you feel comfortable? Where do you go back to? And then I want to ask you, I'm sure that there's so many things that are similar between Israel and India, and I'm sure you and your wife, which is also an Israeli, right? I'm not. You're always comparing. That's the way Amy and I are always comparing between what happens in New York and what happens here, and how people behave.
Yeah.
So I guess this is something that always happens. And my question is now, with those really unusual circumstances, do you see anything which is more obvious or comes out as a difference between Israel and New Delhi?
Yes, well, there are many differences which are not coming, means they're not necessarily coming from the nature of Israelis or the nature of Indians. There are different circumstances. For example, if you are um, going out in the street in India, in some places the police is going to hit you with a stick. Nobody is going to fine you as in Israel. So these are, one has to be in India to understand how does it work and why it's working in this way and what is behind this. So yeah, there are obvious differences. The only problem is how to articulate them. So when you say, oh, I'm just throwing a stupid example, but the Americans are, they care only about money, hence the virus is spreading, the corona is spreading, etc., etc. Whereas Indians are like to stay with their family. These are obvious, these are stupid stereotypes, right? But yes, there are different. The India is dealing differently with dealing with the corona differently than say in Israel, and means I can see the advantages and disadvantages on both sides. So yeah, I guess yeah, to articulate them as to identify them, that will be difficult, but there are differences. Yes.
Mhm. Okay, so maybe we should now see two exhibitions that followed the installation you did in 2017, the Jerusalem Biennale. And I think they are very connected, of course, to what we started with. What do you think we should start with the Vadi or with the
With the
Mamad?
Wadi, I think that even though it came after 2 months after the subtle silence, I think this is more connected to what we saw and what we spoke about.
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
an exhibition that you showed in Afula, which is actually the
Yeah.
hometown of your grandparents.
Yeah, and in mine as well, and my parents as well. Yeah. I grew up in Afula. Yeah.
And you know, if in the Biennale you really took elements from the home and replaced them in the gallery space, now you really build like a structure that in a way looks like you want to rebuild the home in the gallery.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it was a bigger project, so I could do more, and I had more budget. But no, that's not a complaint, huh? But but no, I think the idea is similar, though it's interesting what you're saying. I think in the Jerusalem Biennale, I focus on one particular element. Within my grandparents' drawing room, there was a hole in the ceiling, and according to the tradition of Yemenite Jews, or to be more specific, Jews of Sana'a. It was opened once a year during the Sukkot festival, and instead of a permanent ceiling, there was it would be covered by natural leaves or so that what I focused on during the Biennale. I means the metaphor, the artistic metaphor is almost obvious. No, they had a hole in the ceilings. They had what we call the sukkah, the hut. We call it temporary house, and they had temporality. They had the instability embedded within their permanent house in Afula, and this was my focus, and this inspired me to continue to analyze artistically the elements, the different elements of the house. So they came to Afula, they came to Rosh Hashanah first, then they came to Afula, they stayed in the Shikun, and they were allotted a house they had to buy. Um, what we call in Hebrew Beit Sochnut, agency home, which is a very basic house, measure 7 by 7 meter or something like this. I can't remember all the details. And it is a very modernist structure, very neat, very clean, and that was my point of departure when I decided to elaborate the project from Jerusalem Biennale. So what I did was to take this modern, very modern structure and see how my grandparents twisted that structure, and in that way they added more elements which are related to their own life, to the way it is. So the architecture of the house became a meeting point between Israel, modernism, Zionism, and Yemen that they brought with them to Afula. So this is one of what we can see here. This is only one perspective of this cube. On the other side, you can see that it becomes like a cave, which is made of. The structure is covered with what we call spritz in Hebrew, coming from German. It's a particular way of using the plaster. It's very, very cheap way, which was very common during that time and well until the 80s, I guess. And I was playing with this material and tried to create a sense of a cave inside. So it has two sides. You have this white, modernist, neat and clean cube that you see from the outside, and from the inside, even though it's still minimal, it's still the same material, there is nothing inside. You can see those strange shapes that I was trying to create inside.
And you see like the plants that were planted in like olive oil cans, like big.
Yeah.
And the strings on which usually were used to hang the laundry and
yeah.
So this is like trying to basically inquire about home as a space, but maybe more than this, like home as a set of symbols.
Well, as I said, if you first of all, the interesting part, the neighborhood of my grandparents, which was a neighborhood of immigrants from Yemen and other Eastern countries, had a particular character that I remember from my childhood. And if you go there, their son built those huge houses with a very different character. They all look as if they were taken from some magazine, and the neighborhood kind of lost its beauty, to my mind, or its particular way. Means Yemen is not as felt in the neighborhood as it used to be. So yeah, the idea of working with the house was not only a matter of nostalgia. It was also a matter of really trying to analyze and understand how this traditional way of living is different from the more modern, the more contemporary ways of living, which is translated into architecture. So the house of my grandparents was not simply a space in which they lived or slept or had food. It was also a space it was a meeting point. It was the center of their culture. So you saw in those cans, they had a theme, and which would be used on every Saturday in the Havdalah um, when the ceremony, the blessing on the wine is taking place by after sunset. So one of the things that you do, you have to smell the hadassim, has certain odor. So that means from childhood, I remember my job was to go and get them from the garden. So the garden didn't have only the idea, the meaning of the garden was not only to beautify the house. It was a practical thing which is connected not only to, I don't know, to eat something from the tree. She had other trees in the garden, my grandmother, but it was also connected to the ritual, to the way of living. So that each and every minimal gesture in the exhibition tried to show that. You spoke about the washing line, the laundry wires. You say, take this now. So those were, it was moving. You can't see it in the image, but there was a motor connected to it, and it was moving slowly, slowly. And since the wire was white, you could hardly see it, and it was giving like a sense of continuity, minor continuity, maybe slight hope. Something. Yeah.
Well, you said before something about Eastern countries, and you did this gesture. So it's good that we have Zoom to track that. And then, you know, I don't know why, but it kind of brought the thought to my mind, or the experience, or the memory. You know, my grandparents also coming from Yemen. I think we share a lot of notions.
Yeah.
And then it struck me now that I remember very strongly that when I went to visit India, suddenly in some things, not in everything, in some things I felt like it's kind of feels familiar, like things that I can find similarities. We spoke before about similarities or differences between India and Israel.
Yeah.
I found similarities between India and Yemen. Like, for instance, this samne and ghee, right? It's like, it's the same thing, pretty much. Yeah. And you know, if there's like a smell that I can imagine that I remember from my grandmother's house, it's like the smell of the samne.
Yeah.
So I went to India and suddenly it's like a common thing. Sure. So do you think this is also something that makes you feel comfortable in India?
Well, this is, first of all, the simple answer is yes. But it's complicated because there is a risk here of putting the whole East, and hence I use this gesture. There is a risk of putting the heat in one baggage that you put inside very, very different cultures, and you say, oh, they're all the same. Yemen and Egypt and Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, well, yeah, they're all Easterners. It's all, they're Oriental, etc., etc. And this is one of the problematic contribution, or that whatever baggage that we are taking from colonialism. Having said that, it's not that I think that there are similarities between India and Yemen as such, but I do think that, I mean, I have never been to Yemen, and whatever I know about Yemen comes from my father, from my grandmother, from my brother, who is a historian of Yemen and the area. But yeah, what I think is common, and what I think for people like us, what was difficult for me, at least, to imagine growing up in Israel, being brought up in a country who was, you know, Zionism is also one shade of modernism. So I think it was very difficult for me to imagine other ways of living until I came to India. So India has so many. India also negotiated modernism in so many ways. It's not to say that India is somehow outside modernism, But I do think that India, in many things, negotiates modernism differently. And I think, yes, I sense that different way of living reminds me many things. What I heard about Yemen, what I imagined about Yemen, what I saw about Yemen. And yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I didn't mean to get into this very personal thing, but it's very fascinating. And so let's go to the second exhibition that we thought to share today. So this one is Subtle Silence, the Mama Daka, also curated by Avshalom Suleiman.
Yes, Avshalom is my curator, and he just joined the conversation.
Shalom, Avshalom.
Excellent curator.
So it feels a bit different, though you can find like also some issues that are you still deal with the same issues, but it's very different than the exhibition in Afula.
I want to say something about it, which I shouldn't, but still. When I was working on this exhibition, this was by the end of 2018, and the other exhibition in Afula was the beginning of 2019. So in between, we had 1.5 months. I'm saying we, because me and Avshalom, we worked together very hard physically on these two exhibitions. And this exhibition is dealt with my remembrance from my days at the yeshiva, at the religious seminar. How do you translate yeshiva? It's not the same. And he dealt with those experiences of trying to find God through this particular religious way, halacha, etc., etc. So that was a reflection on that. It was much smaller. It is one room, and hence dealing with this exhibition, it was a very fine balance, how to integrate all the works together. We started with 9 artworks, and we ended up showing only 7. In the process, we took out 2 artworks, and we had only 5 days to do it. So what I wanted to say that I shouldn't say, since I think my religious upbringing was far more Ashkenazi, and to those who are not from Israel, that would mean that I grew up in institutions whose pathos and their way of thinking was designed, was formalized, conceptualized by Western Jews. And I think there was slight conflict between my Yemenite identity and the means nobody forced you to be Western in those religious seminars, in the yeshiva, but it was I mean, you don't need to say much. It was quite obvious there is a certain ideal, and that ideal is not necessarily black. So when I was this exhibition didn't deal with identities or anything, but I thought to myself when I did it that this exhibition is this is one exhibition was a Yemenite exhibition, and the other exhibition is quite Ashkenazi.
That's like a Markaz Arav exhibition.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what I had in mind. So yeah.
So you see this ventilator that usually is on the ceiling.
Yeah.
But you basically took it down.
Yeah.
And wanted to scare everybody. Was that insured?
No, not at all. Though it was dangerous because there was this Arduino, and I'm a very little expert when it comes to Arduino. But the function of the Arduino was to cut the electricity time and again, so it would move very, 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 very slowly.
Okay.
The only problem that when the relays get worked out, So the fan started working very fast. So it was dangerous, but the idea was not to scare anyone. The idea was to slow down the whole experience of the exhibition, to give this very slow movement of the fan. Yeah.
And those shelves, I think I read somewhere that they are from your home.
Yes. So when you enter my parents' house, my house, so the first things that you see are books. So you see books. There are books everywhere. My father didn't spare any room of the house, but that's the way I grew up with. We didn't have sofa when I was growing up. We had books and books and books and books, and the library was just falling apart. So after I don't know how many years, my father decided to change the library, and I asked my mother to keep those old shelves, which she did for some reason. And the inspiration for this, I think the whole exhibition, there are two elements. There are images and materials taken from my religious upbringing, let's put it like this, boldly or roughly. And on the other hand, there are always those resonance with modernist artists. In this case, Donald Judd. Donald Judd had those shelves installation, one object on top of the other. So there is obviously an inspiration, but also a kind of dialogue between what he did and what I'm trying to do with my father's library. It's empty, it's climbing, it's trying to reach higher. It's a bit broken, as you can see.
But it's not עגלה ריקה in any way.
No, I'm far from thinking about עגלה ריקה and עגלה מלאה, but having said that, that's an interesting way to think about it. I think the whole exhibition spoke about this endeavor to reach God through the protocols of the religious yeshiva or Orthodox Judaism. And in a sense, my failure to be able to do it within that frame. But at the same time, and that's the complicated part, also the success in this failure. So that's put aside. What I had in mind in this exhibition, that below that religious journey, there was also an artistic journey which was trying to do the same. So each and every work which speaks about this endeavor to reach upward, inward, beyond, etc., is also reflected in my artistic journey, trying to find myself, trying to find an artistic expression worthy of all those ideals I grew up on. So the failure is not only religious, the failure is also artistic, but I think that the idea is that within that failure, there is also some kind of, I don't know, something is found, something is there, something which I try to verbalize as subtle silence.
It reminds me, there's two ways to handle failure. Like you can try again and again until you succeed, or you can try and go to do something else and maybe you succeed there. So, I did it myself. I had some kind of a turning point in my life where I felt that it's very different, but felt like I'm failing in being an economist. So I decided to go for the arts, and I don't know if I'm succeeding there, but time will say. So I think we saw like an amazing example of the way you can transmit the notion of home and the notion of culture through the art, and really reveal some of your inner world to us through your artwork. And then now, I want to discuss with you in the few minutes that we have left, something which is less about the art itself, more about the art world and the context of what we're doing. So this is something I'm saying in every session, in every talk in the series. The reason I started this series is because I'm very concerned. I'm kind of terrified from what happens now in the world because of the coronavirus, because of the social distancing that we must take, and because it feels like culture and art are like last in line when it comes to people think about like exit strategies or whatever, going back to normal life. And so what I thought in the beginning is just to call my friends and ask them how are they, what are they doing, what do they think, to in a way consult with them. I know it's very hard to predict, but maybe we should start with what do you do right now? Like when it comes to, I know that you're working on your doctorate, but what do you hear about artist friends? What do you hear about the art world in India, in New Delhi, in generally around the world? What is the sentiment that you feel about our situation, and what do artists do?
I means to begin with, I'm not sure artists have artists as artists, not artists as human beings. But I'm not sure artists as artists has much to say about what's going to happen, what is happening to us, etc., etc. I think the advantage with artists is precisely in their ability to express something which is not necessarily always conscious, and then we as viewers have the possibility of looking at what they did and try to connect it to our thoughts about what is happening at the moment, etc., etc. I will give you an example. I'm teaching online, and I have a class on sculpture and installation with my students. So one of means it's quite complicated to run online classes instead of studio classes. But so in any case, one of the exercises that I give them, I send them to the kitchen and I ask them to create installation, whatever installation. It's an exercise in their kitchen. So one of them took the toaster, and instead of placing bread inside, she placed those plates, and she titled the work rather illustratively. She said it's mismatch, but it was quite interesting for me to think about it. Right, I'm her viewer. I'm not only her teacher. I mean this sense that you're stuck at home and there is a mismatch and it's not really working, etc., etc. So artists are I think good when it comes to express whatever they feel, not necessarily consciously, but just by certain gestures. Not all of them are meaningful, trust me on that. So I don't know, as an artist, if I have something smart to say about the situation. As human being, I think that this, yeah, risking the obvious, saying the obvious. I think we all know that our situation at the moment is far more fragile than what we thought. I think that's kind of given. I think liberty and freedom can't be the only guiding lights, the guiding ideals that we have. I think it's quite clear that the dream of neoliberalism is not really is not enough. Let's put it like this. I appreciate freedom, but at the same time, one should have more than this, not only for having meaningful lives, but also to survive. But I also think that we are very lucky. If you compare it to what happened all around the world in 1918, by the end of the First World War, and you see in which condition we are now. So we are uncomfortable. There are many people dying, extremely sad. Many people are affected financially, that's a very sad story. But we are better off. So I'm optimistic. I think at some point we will go back to normal. That's my guess, and hopefully we will remember the lessons that we had while staying at home.
I want to hang out to something that you said, that artists can speak the unconscious, or you said it better than I say, or maybe express somehow some things that are maybe harder to express through words or through sentences. And then there's no doubt that we're experiencing a mega event. It's like something that affects everyone all over the world. I don't think there was anything like that in the past. And then maybe artists can help or be part of processing it in the aftermath of the pandemic.
Yes, means yeah, why not? But also people who are posting on Facebook, they are also processing and helping us to think about what happened. I'm not I'm not very keen on the idea. I mean, for me, thinking about art and about quite skeptical about those notions. I don't think there is a great destiny for art and artists helping us, helping humanity to improve itself, etc., etc. These people who are devoting their time and life to think about what they are going through, about society, and expressing that in certain ways, yeah, I mean, that's great. But I think other people are doing that as well. I don't think we are unique. I think we are doing it in a certain way. But I'm not very well when it comes to the relation of art and politics and art. I'm more skeptical. I think I mean, how many people go to visit an exhibition and all? I'm very means it's about quantity. It's not that I don't think that it's important. I do it. That's what I do. But still, yeah, I think there is some kind of romantic exaggeration about the role of the artist and the destiny of art.
Okay, that's also a point. And talking about politics, maybe I'm sure you're more aware and more informed about politics right now in India. That's always part of my interest, speaking with people in different places around the world. Like, I guess you are also aware of what happens in Israeli politics, but can you tell us just like in a few sentences what's going on there?
Means the lockdown in India is very complicated. It's means while we are sitting home relatively happily, and we sense that we are safe. And there are many people who are badly affected by this lockdown. But on the other side, it's a very tricky it's a very tricky game. No, it's when you means people we're walking. I don't know if still walking from the big cities in India to their villages to go back because the government decided to shut transportation, etc., etc. People are without job, people without food. There are really big issues. But at the same time, what is the alternative? The critics are not very creative when it comes to propose solutions. And as a politician, you have to take decisions. I'm not saying the decisions taken were always great. Nevertheless, they are decisions, and criticism is not always a decision.
And do you feel politicians are trying to take advantage of the situation and, increase their power or decrease the level of freedom?
Yeah, I guess that can happen everywhere, but I think
It does, in a way, happen everywhere.
it happens everywhere, but it's again, I think means it's very easy because most of us people who are sitting like me and you and who are going to criticize the limitation of freedom, etc., etc. There are people who are relatively well off precisely due to the restriction on freedom which is imposed by the government. So we are enjoying that management, that organization, and at the same time we criticize it. So I'm it's not that I don't understand it, and it's not as if I don't have a similar sentiment, but at the same time I'm uncomfortable with this duality. I'm uncomfortable with this position. So yeah, I'm not, this is a crisis management. I'm not good at judging what exactly is done for what a good step is or not, etc., etc. I'm sure people are taking advantage, but I'm also sure that at the same time we also have to sacrifice some things in order to manage everything. I think basically modernity and the West is too inspired by or too fascinated by the idea of freedom. And I think freedom is a very important ideal among many others. And Corona is letting us discover how crucial it is to think about other ideals as well. So yeah, at the same time that I appreciate and understand this criticism on the limitation of freedom, there is also a sense that this is slightly childish, that it's not taking responsibilities, it doesn't look at the whole picture. Now, I don't know much about um, deep state and speculation about what the state does and all. It doesn't mean that I don't think that there is a deep state and all. But, speculations, my friends on social media, some of them are really crazy. All the stories coming together. So what I could gather is that Bill Gates is sitting now in China and is going to replace the president or whatever as the head of the Communist Party, and he's making sure, along with many other leaders around the free world, that they are limiting freedom, etc., etc. So yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we should finish with a last comment about home.
about home.
Yeah, because I think that was the main part of our conversation. It's like home.
Yeah.
Do you think someone can have more than one home?
Yeah, means it's. I think home is rather like many other definitions or words or terms. It's a very flexible and fluid category concept. So I speak about my parents' house, and at the same time, I didn't go at least through these moments that I'm telling myself, hey, this is your parents' house. This is not your house. So I when I speak about their house, I think about it as my house. And at the same time, I'm thinking, hey, my mother is sitting here, and maybe she doesn't think that it's my house, or not in the same way. So yeah, I think we use the word house and home in different contexts. So the place where I'm here, where I'm sitting, that's my home. And my parents' house is also my home. And I have other homes in India and in Israel and in different places. But having said that, this doesn't mean that it's so simple. It's not as if home can be taken from one place to the other. There is an obvious sense of gap or a breach, certain discontinuity in that harmonious way of living within one house, living with the same ideals and all, and And I think, I don't know, throughout life, you try to go back home, and then you die. So.
Yeah,
I guess, I don't know.
And these days you stay home, so you won't die.
Yeah.
You need to stay home.
Hopefully, not soon. Not soon.
Okay. Achia, I want to thank you so much for doing this conversation with me, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I will end, like always, with the wish and pray that we will all be able to get out of the screens and meet each other and hug each other,
Yes.
and have like a real coffee together very soon.
Inshallah, very soon.
Thank you for sharing with us all those insights and all those experiences and your art. And if there's a question, someone wants to, I see someone start. Menashe, hi, how are you? Wait, we can't hear you, so let's...
I just want to say thank you very much. It was very interesting. Although I know a lot about my brother, anyway, it was very interesting. Thank you, and thank you, Rami.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Okay, so on Sunday we will have 2 talks. One is with someone you know very well here. It's with Gwedi Wijaya from Singapore.
Yeah.
It's going to be 5 p.m. Jerusalem time. And at 9 p.m. Jerusalem time, we'll speak with Andy Arnovich, based in Jerusalem. So be with us, and mostly welcome.
Thank you so much, Rami.
Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.